key. I suppose the upside of that, the balance of that, is if we're investing all this, we are then committed to, it would be in our general sense, to improve the environment around the harbour so that we improve the ambience of Torquay Harbour so that we do get those prices. So maybe that might be the justification when you have the public realm scheme. But that is a risk as I see it, and I think you should be aware of that. That is number one. And that's the biggest issue. Number two, and it links a little with what the next item is, and there was a request and a suggestion made by myself and many others when Debenhams closed, the shortage of toilets in the area of the harbour. And I know that Caroline Custerson at the tourist office, which isn't very far away, is inundated with requests for where are the toilets. That we are very, very lacking in toilet provision in that main harbour area of Torquay. The nearest public toilets are at the far end of Beacon Quay by the entrance to the Old Living Coast, or else over by the Old Palm Court, the Abbey Sands development, or way up in the town. Is there a possibility to include, as I know lots of residents who've contacted me would like to see included, a public toilet facility there in what is the heart of our tourism area? So that is point number two. And finally, the third point is just the delivery. There's, well done to the administration for all the excitement and all the plans and all the ideas, but it's trying to get the delivery. So can we have some reassurance that there is the actual capacity for this council to deliver this scheme on top of all the other schemes that at the moment are in the pipeline, schemes that have been talked about, schemes that we're all excited about, but with the greatest respect, none of which at the moment, other than the private hotel schemes and schemes that completed the Hamptons, that was a legacy of the previous administration, nothing yet is on the ground. No one's put a brick on top of a brick for all the schemes that have been talked about and all the excitement there is. So please, it's the risk, the financial risk. Is there a possibility of a public toilet? And is there the capacity to deliver this? Thank you, Mr Deputy Leader.
Thank you.
Shall I push my button off? Is that what I must do?
Yes, please. Thank you, Councillor Bye. Councillor Long, do you want to take some of those and then bring in Liam or...
Yes. So, yes, thank you, Councillor Bye. I think a lot of it's about confidence in the Bay. I know we've sometimes accused your side of the room of not having confidence in the Bay, but perhaps we should appoint you as the estate agent for selling the flats, and I'm sure they'd sell for double that price. But I think I'll let the professional officers, outline the work that they've done. I'm sure your plea for toilets will be taken as part of the consultation as well.
Yeah, thank you. So just to pick up on the sales risk point, I think something I just raised as well. Councillor Barr, you're absolutely right. That is number one key risk for the council. The figures that are within the report are supported by comparable information and two independent valuations, which I think gives us the confidence that we need. And the price point in which we've assumed is not the high point within that band, it is that mid and low point. So again, what we believe and what we're being advised is that those sales rates are absolutely, achievable in those locations. So, with the views of the marina and the lack of stock within a similar location with a similar outlook is what drives those sort of prices. I think just to pick up your comment on public toilets, so it certainly wasn't within the brief, but I would remind you that we do also have public toilets at Fleet Walk, recently refurbished as well. Councillor Bye, I invite you to take a trip down there and have a look at the work that's been done. Recognise we always want better, more provision of that type in and around for our customers' residents, but it is a real balance there, as you well know. So I think it's not within the scheme. It is tricky to deliver and maintain. So, but we believe that there is sufficient provision at Fleet Walk. And capacity, thank you. So with the scheme, the vast majority of the work has already been complete, so we are expecting a planning submission in June, subject to a decision tonight. And then in terms of the next steps, as I've explained, it's the procurement of a main contractor, and then the work is then passed over them to deliver. So I'm absolutely confident that there is capacity within the system to deliver this site at pace.
Councillor Bye, if you want to stay there. I'm not in that position to appoint cabinet members. We're a partnership. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you very much indeed. Sorry I can't be with you. I'm actually in London at the moment, but this was such an important issue that I had to log in, and I'm pleased that my old boss is there to cover me for the other items on the agenda, young Nicholas. Of course, we're all delighted that something will come of the Debenham site. We are spending nearly £10 million of council money. Last week, we agreed to spend at full council £10 million again. So that's 20 million within a week, which could be worrying. Councillor Bye said about the flats, 16 flats, very high average price. Councillor Long, you can laugh about it, but you get those numbers wrong, and don't forget that estate agents very often give you a high figure, and the margins are so low that we'll come in with a loss on the project. My old corker again, that if you look at the recommendation, the final decision, once a detailed business case is put forward, is delegated to the Director of Finance. I think it would be better if it had actually come back to Cabinet or Council. Again, a 10 million, and it says in the recommendation that they were waiting for a detailed business plan. So we haven't got that, so it's going nowhere in the public domain. And I think it should come back to Cabinet. As I said, I think this is a risky business. We've got the sale of the flats. We've got building rates going up enormously at the moment, which will make this project very, very marginal. I don't know whether you've actually considered for this project to go out to the private sector, maybe get up to the planning stage, and then for it to go out to the private sector. Let them take the risk. After all, they are the experts at doing projects like this. The council is borrowing so much money on projects like this, as we heard from Councillor Bye, with very few bricks actually being put above each other. I believe that we should look at the private sector to see if they can do it, to take some of the risk away from this council. We on the Conservatives, as I said at the council meeting last week, we have extreme concerns of how much money this council is actually borrowing without actually having delivered anything. So I'm putting that on the record, that we are concerned at the amount of borrowing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. And I'll come back on some of those comments after Councillor Long.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In his speech, as opposed to a question, in part of it, Councillor Lewis didn't quite complete the sentence, as he often doesn't do on his perennial comment about consultation with. The end of the sentence goes on to say about in consultation with a cabinet member, which I think is yourself. And as we always say, when the elected mayoral system ended, there was a consultation, and the residents of the Bay wanted to go to a committee system, but the Conservatives knew better and went for a cabinet system, and this is the cabinet system in operation. So if you didn't want it, then you shouldn't have gone for it. The Conservative approach appears to be, apart from those ones who say that they agree with Debenhams, which they do in private, seems to be for the council not to do anything and to leave it to the private sector. Well, we had 15 years of that in Torbay, and we were left with buildings such as Crossways, and the pavilion, etc., and buildings just being left to rot. And Oldway, indeed, and didn't that go well with the private sector? So sometimes the public sector has to intervene, which then draws in the private sector coming in afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Long. And I think it's just another example of the parties opposite who have this relentless desire to delay things. It's always dither and delay. And the reason we made decisions last week to invest £10 million in housing is because we have a housing crisis in Torbay. It's a legacy that we've inherited, a lack of affordable and social rented housing and temporary accommodation in Torbay. We're trying to right those wrongs. The borrowing for economic regeneration and investment around the harbour is investing in our tourism industry as well as our economy. And it's perfectly right that each of these are assessed on their individual merits by their business case. If those business cases don't stack up, then it would be irresponsible, and our Section 151 officer would not seek approval from myself as a Cabinet member to sign off those approvals under the Cabinet system. So I think it's also interesting that Councillor Byers are concerned about capacity and delivery at pace, and here we are, one of the deputy leader of the opposition asking and seeking for further delay. We want to get on with it, and hopefully the decision tonight will be positive, and we can ask our officers to submit that planning application and move at pace so we can demolish Debenhams and start the regeneration of that part of the Strand. Any other members with their hands up? Councillor Lewis, I see you've got your hand up.
That's very kind of you, Chairman. Thank you so much. As for Councillor Long, in fact, over those years, we did actually perform quite well. Torwood Street, Palm Court, Hotel, private sector, and many others. And as I'm on holiday, my thinking cap is none, but those are two really big ones. As far as going at pace, Chairman, Oldway, you've been in power for 3 years.
Councillor Lewis, we're talking about Debenhams.
Well, no, you were talking about those. You brought them up.
Councillor Lewis, have you got anything else to add to the debate on the regeneration of 12 to 14 the Strand? If not, we'll move to the vote.
No, I just thought as you brought them up, I could...
We'll move to the vote. Thank you, Councillor Lewis.
Thank you very much.
If there's no further debate, then we'll move to the vote. All those in favour, please show.
Unanimous.
Thank you, colleagues. Move on to the English Riviera Destination Management Plan review. Councillor Long.
Thank you. And before we completely finish the last item, I just wanted to congratulate Mr. Brown on what I thought was a new word, decremental. I thought it sounded excellent, so thank you. So, Destination Management Plan. At the risk of stating the obvious, Torbay, or the English Riviera as the brand name is a tourism destination, and tourism is incredibly important to Torbay's economy. The English Riviera has a destination management plan which sets out the priority actions that can help the destination succeed. The plan is monitored by the Destination Management Group, which is a great example of partnership working as it brings together the public and private sector, and the private sector is in the form of accommodation providers, attractions, and the English Riviera Business Improvement District Company. The existing destination management plan ran out at the end of 2021, and the purpose of the report before us is to seek the Cabinet's approval to launch the public consultation and of the new plan 2022 to 2027. The new plan has the following objectives: recover to the 2019 spend and visitor numbers by 2024, and achieve an additional £75 million of spend and 1,500 new jobs by 2027 by growing, and to rebalance with a more sustainable approach by growing the shoulder seasons. There are 4 main themes mentioned in the plan, which have been based on research and evidence. They are food and drink, on the water activity, making more of the UNESCO Global Geopark status, and culture and events. And it's good that we're working with the bid company on events more and more. There are also 7 decimation management priorities to take the plan forward. The first is brilliant basics, and these are the bread and butter issues such as beach management, parking, street cleansing, etc. And just to build, Mr. Chairman, on the theme from the last debate about how we've had to build on the inheritance of a complete lack of investment in such basic activities, that we've had to put an awful lot of investment into things like street lights, buying new equipment for cleaning, and painting things such as railings. The second priority is visitor accommodation, and this is one for our planning colleagues and Councillor Moray, and that's to make sure that there isn't a drift downwards towards poor quality accommodation in our planning policies. The third priority is towns and connectivity, and that's public realm and research to have tourism in mind. Fourthly, sustainable tourism, which is addressing climate change. Fifthly, skills, and that's about making tourism more of an attractive career of choice for people, and that's particularly around making sure it's more of an all-year-round career rather than just a seasonal part-time job. Sixthly, research and skills, monitoring progress and marketing, and the bid company do this very well. And finally, business tourism, which is very, very important. A lot of work has gone into the draft plan. In fact, as colleagues will see from the report, that this has been this report has been pretty much co-designed with the industry. I'd like to thank in particular Becky Davis and Carl Wyard for their hard work on this issue, and I would like to propose, please, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and I believe Councillor Moray, you're seconding.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, more than happy to second this. For fear of duplicating what Councillor Long has said, I'll keep it brief, plus the fact my voice may not hold out anyway. But it is something that requires partnership working. And we're lucky to have the English Riviera bid company. We have now the English Riviera group, destination group, sorry, apologies. So what are we trying to achieve? This is where I may duplicate what Councillor Long is saying, but we need to increase our visitor numbers, both nationally and internationally. We need to extend the current season beyond the school holiday dates, as it were. We need to attract new visitors. Welcome back the old stagers who come back year after year. That's fine, brilliant. But we want to attract new visitors as well. Obviously, as Councillor Long said, we want to increase visitor spend. We need to attract investment and to a degree reinvestment, and we need to raise the level of skills in this sector. So I'm happy to second, Chair, and my voice is just about to go.
Thank you, Councillor Moray. Before we move to any debate, Carl, did you want to add anything?
I think Councillor Long has covered it beautifully. Thanks.
How much did he pay you? So, open to debates. Any colleagues around the table? I would just like to say that I think this is actually a key consultation. I mean, it's already been widely developed, as we we've heard from sector partners, and it is all about that emphasis on continuing partnership working to deliver for Torbay, and there's no doubt that the partnerships are really successful, and long may they continue, particularly this one. And I think it's also testimony to our commitment to that ambition, again I'll say it, to become the UK's premier tourism resort. So with that, are there any hands up around the room? Councillor Bye.
Good evening again. It's a very comprehensive report. In places, it just feels to me a little bit off key. I appreciate a lot of work has gone into it. The theme that comes across and is mentioned, that the phrase that's mentioned is that we are more than the sum of our parts. I think that phrase is mentioned several times in the report. To me, with Torbay, you've got so many amazing things that would draw visitors in, but the overall experience, because of a lack of sort of connectivity and sometimes marketing, is that we're actually less than the sum of our parts. I'm surprised in here, and I'm someone who enjoys theatre, maybe I should declare an interest as the president of the Toad and the president of the Paint and Panto and the trustee of Brixton Operatic and Dramatic, that there's very little mention of theatre in here, and yet the Princess Theatre at the moment is enjoying the most amazing spring, early summer season. It is the largest theatre this side of Bristol. It's bigger in terms of capacity than the Theatre Royal at Plymouth, and has been selling out musicals, has been selling out stand-up comics. Is a huge part of the tourism offer. There's no specific mention of the Princess Theatre in the whole of this report, and there's very little about theatre in general, and yet that to me seems one of the key offers. Something I do just want to refer to in the report is the term, if I'm going to quote this from page 67, please bear with me, the term English Riviera is rarely used by the visitors or by travel media. Well, it's brilliant. What's he called? Sarah Kalman? Susan Kalman. I thought that programme was just amazing. I thought that was the best publicity ever for Torbay and the English Riviera. The grand day out on the English Riviera with Susan Kalman. I thought that was brilliant. And I know that Karen Custon had a lot to do with putting that together, and I've thanked her personally. But here we go. Greater recognition often lies with the three towns, and Torquay in particular. Visitors tend to speak of the area fondly, again reflecting high levels of repeat visits. Awareness levels are low among non-visitors who do not tend to see it as a place to aspire to visit. This is the killer. It rates particularly low in terms of heritage, culture and food. That I find extraordinary, because those to me are the three things that are most special about the Bay. So we have this extraordinary heritage that we don't seem to make the most of, because, for example, in Torquay, the Kent's Cavern, the museum and Tor Abbey and Cockington just don't work together, they aren't linked up. There really ought to be a heritage trail. So culture, I've mentioned the theatre's right the way across. And food, we have the most amazing eating out scene, particularly in Torquay, Brixham, as you'd expect with the fish restaurant, and up and coming in Paynton. How do we kind of get that across? So I think we're recognising our weaknesses. I'm not terribly sure how this pushes the strengths. And before I just finish up, the brilliant basics that are talked about, the things like the toilets, talked about on the earlier item, but it's certainly clearing up graffiti, it's certainly making areas, I would say, off-piste cleaner and tidier and more welcoming for visitors. And very, very, very finally, one of the sectors that we're aiming for is families, young families. And the hassle of going abroad with young families, negotiating airports and extreme heat, perhaps on Mediterranean beaches. The Bay is a fantastic destination. But how family friendly are we, and how much focus will there be on that in this new document? For example, in Torquay, there's very little for children and families in the immediate area of the seafront and around the harbour. It's a great shame, I think, with the government money, the town deal money, that there was no opportunity taken to replicate the play facility that you've got at Paynton, something similar, of course, at Teignmouth. We've got nothing like that in Torquay. So there's lots to focus on. How can people get involved with the engagement? How can people contribute their ideas? So those are my thoughts. How do we get involved, please, in the engagement? How can we all sort of make this a stronger document?
Thank you, Councillor Bye, and Councillor Long. And then Carl.
Yes, Carl no doubt want to come in. So theatre, I imagine will, and Carl, correct me if I'm wrong, Carl, theatre will come under culture and events, and that is a key theme of the new plan. And I imagine with you being as part of the marketing of it, I'm sure people will flock, Councillor Bye. And the Heritage Trail, I know that's something that Caroline Custerson wants to develop further with the council. I think we may have been at the same breakfast together, so that was good. Food and culture are identified in the plan as growth areas, so we want to make more of that, so that will be drawn out. Brilliant basics. At the risk of being controversial, according to Caroline, or the bid company's research, for the first time ever, I don't think toilets were actually featured in the kind of feedback from residents, but obviously we must not rest on our laurels and improve that experience. And we are, as I said in my spiel at the beginning, beginning to tackle some of those basics, but obviously that needs to continue in partnership with others. And in terms of family fun, Paynton, I think, was identified as the key focus for that kind of family kind of destination. But I don't know whether, Carl, I put a big foot in it or whether you need to add anything to it.
No, thank you. Just a couple of things to add. I think you're right in terms of the challenge around the theatre. The concept is more around the wider cultural offer. So the plan sets out in terms of 4 product development areas. One is culture, but also in terms of a target market, so trying to address those cultural explorers. So the data that you indicated was around those non-visitors. So how do we get those non-visitors to Torbay? So understanding what they don't know about Torbay and aligning that to what some of our potential strengths are, but recognising that some of those strengths need to be developed. Hence why culture sits in one of our product development themes. In terms of how you can get involved, hopefully once this goes out for public consultation, you'll have your opportunity to have your say.
Councillor Morey.
I guess you would expect me to say this, but I can understand where Nick's coming from, because he's absolutely correct in saying that culture and events play an important role in attracting visitors as well as providing an attraction for residents as well. An example of the way we're trying to progress the culture and the event side of it is you only have to look in 2 weeks' time for the Music on the Meadow, then followed by the Torbay Air Show. These are the events like these we want to expand on if at all possible. And I anticipate Councillor Long taking this on board as this plan progresses.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I think picking up on your point, Councillor Bye, about the place side of a tourism destination, our commitment has been demonstrated by the additional money that we provided, which is seeing the replacement of the old rusty railings with marine grade stainless steel railings. There's investment in support for the beach marshals and that kind of thing during the season. So we are putting more money to try and improve the place. And I think that is going down well. We've had the investment in the exciting LED lights along Torquay and in Paynton, and we've got plans to do a lighting project around the harbour to finish that off as part of the Strand regeneration. So I think there's lots of positive things going on behind the scenes. I totally take your point about graffiti. And I do know that Swissco's graffiti machine has now been repaired and is again functioning. But some of those hard-to-reach areas, and Councillor Bye and myself and several others are frequently emailed by a really diligent and committed resident about these issues, and he has a point. And we need to make sure that those areas are as looked after as the prime areas of the of Torbay. Perhaps Carl would like to just expand on this. Is a consultation, so there's opportunities to get the feedback from the many organisations that you're involved with, Councillor Bye. But perhaps Carl will be able to give us an indication of the consultation process.
Thank you. So, subject to approval tonight, the press release has been drafted. There will be a link on the council website, and there are a series of questions to ask that probe into your views on the objectives that are set out in the target markets that we want to reach out to, the product development and the destination management approach that we're setting out within there. We'll also be engaging with the business communities, whether that's the chambers, the business forum, our bid company. There'll also be a social media campaign, and we're attending a community partnership leaders meeting to give a presentation on what the destination plan is saying. So we'll take that feedback after 6 weeks and further develop the plan.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Councillor Bye. If there's no further debate, we'll move to the vote. All those in favour?
Unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next item, which is Torbay on the move. More people, more active, more often. And Councillor Morey to propose.
Thank you, Chair. Let me start by saying I think the contents of this report should not only be owned by all the members of this authority and all the directorates of this council, but it is also aimed at the residents, irrespective of age, irrespective of mobility, race, or whether a person is rich or poor. This is about wanting our residents to thrive, to turn the tide on poverty, and to reduce inequalities. Increasing physical activity levels across Torbay has the potential to make a positive contribution to health and well-being, to the local economy and to the environment. Increasing physical activity, including sport, at individual or team level has proved a significant health benefits to the heart, the mind and the body, and contributes to the prevention of diseases such as heart, cancers and diabetes. It can also reduce the symptoms of depression and anxiety, with the potential to lead to an increase in life expectancy. Torbay on the Move, in partnership with Active Devon, has undertaken a review and delivered a consultation with partners and key stakeholders. The consultation has increased our understanding of the strengths and the weaknesses of Torbay and its residents, and gives us a better understanding of the opportunities for making a difference for our communities. At this point, it's worth noting that what a positive contribution the playing pitch strategy could play in supporting this aspiration of Torbay on the Move. And that strategy is due sometime in July. Members, to do nothing will mean little impact on the activities rates in Torbay, and overall health and well-being improvements will not be supported. If we continue with a silo mentality, this too will maybe have little impact. But if we move forward with a strategy, we will be in a better position to see improvements in the overall health and well-being of Torbay. Therefore, Chairman, and I've lost it on my machine, I'd like to move the recommendations as printed, and I think it was on page 90. I don't know if you wish me to read them out or Lisa to read them out, but it's up to you guys.
No, I think we can take them as read. Councillor Carter.
Yeah, I'm really pleased to support this. Anything to get us all moving, fitter and healthier would be brilliant, and I include myself in that. I noticed some things jumped out to me, and looking at one of them on 1.5, it says priority audiences, and I'm really pleased to see how many of our outside groups and hard to reach groups are listed in there. So this really is for everyone, this whole document. I've also looked down and seen the action plan on other bits as well, which look very exciting on the further in the report, which I always like to see a report with some suggestions or action plans on it, and they start on page 107 on the main document, and each page has got a whole list of things that it wants to try to achieve, which is brilliant. It also fits with all our priorities in our community and corporate plan, which is always good. And also I noticed on 7.3 that it mentioned about keeping fit, but it also mentions the lighting, where is it? The identity, improving lighting and safer cycling and walking routes, which is always good anyway, because I think if you want to go out running, especially if you're female, lighting is important in the winter months especially, so that's good as well. And 11.1 I also noticed community impact. So this one says reducing our carbon footprint, encouraging walking and cycling, improving benefits on health, which Councillor Murray already raised on there as well, and benefits our tourism offer as well, which ties in with another thing on our agenda this evening. So this really ties together with a lot of things, so I'm very happy to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Law. And sorry, Councillor Carter. So, my apologies, Cordelia. Kevin Mowat, would you like to add anything, or Lincoln?
Chairman, thank you. To be honest with you, I think that the Councillor Murray and Councillor Carter have covered it. I just wanted to echo the point made that this isn't just about sport. It touches so many things that the council does, from the design of transport systems, which was mentioned a minute ago, to targeted interventions. Lots of people don't engage in sport because they don't want to be a member of a club, for example. So, you know, any of our portfolio leads could have presented this, as Councillor Murray said, and any director could have presented it. It's absolutely cross-cutting. It will only have an impact for our communities if we adopt it as part of our DNA as a council, and so do our partners. So it is a system change, and that won't happen overnight. So I absolutely am delighted to be the director that's named on it, but the point is it is something that was delayed, unfortunately, because of COVID. So it started in 2018 and we're now in 22, obviously, but the important thing is that we have to do that cross-cutting work amongst everything we do in the authority, and also with our strategic partners. And you'll see in terms of the financial impact that initially it doesn't need huge investment. It's about redirecting the funds that we already have, both ourselves and our partners, to have those targeted interventions that will get people more active and more mobile, and as a consequence it improves their well-being and in their general health. So I'm really pleased to see this report, Chair.
Thank you, Kevin. Lincoln, did you want to add anything? As Director of Public Health, I think it's appropriate.
There we are.
Yes, so thank you so much for the opportunity. My predecessor started this work in one of her annual reports, raising the issue about physical activity, and it's good to see a really brilliant piece of work having been done, talking with all of our partners across the Bay. And as Kevin has said, and the proposer and the seconder, this cuts across everything that we do, and that's the ethos. About 1 in 4 of us in the Bay are physically inactive. And that means all of the benefits of physical activity is excluded for that group. And when you think about people who have disabilities, those who are physically most at risk, their inactivity is double the rate of the rest of the population. There are inequality markers that track people's physical activity. And so anything that we do that gets people moving is positive. Anything that we do that gets us moving more is even more positive. And the point that you made about this isn't necessarily about sport. Sport is a key part of it. But it may be simply people doing a bit more walking every day in their normal getting around. And it links in with our active travel agenda about how do we ensure, and this is part of how we help to mitigate some of the effects of climate change, etc. How do we set up a system where people in their day-to-day lives, as we used to a few generations ago, get that physical activity without having to, say, join the gym or, do something special. And that's where we want to change that ethos, that you are active without even thinking about it, and that it is enjoyable when you do think about it. So all of the facilities that we need to develop, all the facilities we already have, about how we make that a really attractive offer. And I think as we're thinking about the destination management plan, the huge potential that we have in our sea and the activities that can happen on the beachfront, there is a whole generation of younger and active people that we need to be attracting to the Bay as part of our economic thrust, and also contributing to our tourism product as well. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Lincoln. And I think I could invite every member of the senior leadership team to contribute to this evening, as previously said about each cabinet member, because it does cut right across the whole of the authority and the whole of Torbay, including businesses and voluntary groups. And, as it's been referred to, yes, sport is part of this, but as a member of Sport Torbay and a keen supporter of sport and sports facilities, we've seen a shift in the way in which sport that people take up active sport. It's not always that organised training midweek for a game on a Saturday and possibly a Sunday. They tend to have short five-a-side games, but it's more about informal sport, and it's making sure that we've got those kind of facilities available. But as people said, it could be about walking football or walking netball, or it could be just about taking that walk along the seafront, or in Councillor Bye's case, probably from Paignton to Torquay and back. But it is about that kind of exercise, but it doesn't have to be about strenuous exercise, and it's about how that informs health and well-being, and mental health as well in particular. And I don't think we can underestimate the value of healthy exercise, because that will stop people preventing in the front door of our GPs and our NHS. So there's a huge benefit to be had around getting this strategy right. So I'm totally supportive of it. So is there any other debate? Councillor Bye.
As you know, Mr. Deputy Leader, I get all the exercise I require by delivering leaflets for the Conservative Party. And the Clifton with Maidenway by-election alone was probably equivalent to what most people get from an annual subscription to a gym. This strategy. It seems so high level. I've now got to just call it up again because there's bits in it that I do want to just quote. It seems so very high level. How do you make it happen? Who's actually going to take the ownership on this? So recommendation 1, endorse the proposed strategic outcome themes and pull them together into overarching strategy documentation. I mean, what does that really mean? Can someone tell me? Whose portfolio does it lie within? There have been numerous strategies presented with great excitement and enthusiasm over the last 3 years, and then somehow it's all gone a bit quiet, and I don't know what real difference it's made. It seems to me that this actually links, or could link, with the earlier subject on the destination management. Simple improvements to pathways and signs and getting people to get out and about, whether they're visitors or whether they're residents, and explore what is a stunning place to live or to visit. A little thing I could just say, when I wasn't able to deliver the leaflets, the Conservatives for the lockdown, I was going out and about walking and discovering parts of Torquay genuinely that I didn't know, and pathways that I didn't know. And I've been walking today up the Rose Hill Path. I've never walked up the Rose Hill Path. There's absolutely no signs. I was walking up the Rose Hill Path to try and find a tree that had fallen down that had blocked this path. And it's a number of trees that have blocked a number of paths in the Wellswood ward and around the Wellswood ward. So it's maintaining the basic infrastructure so that people can get out and enjoy and walk, and so that you've got better signage so that people can enjoy what is on our doorstep. So exploring around Cockington, for example, last summer, when we couldn't do very much else, or maybe the summer before, and then finding all these signs for the John Musgrove Trail, which is mentioned in the tourism destination management, and finding a sign that said Shippey or Edgenswell 1.5 miles. And I thought that can't possibly be. Shippey isn't there, Shippey's there. And that's what prompted me to go back another day with a friend and actually to explore that path. But we haven't done much of that recently. So it's doing the basic stuff, the brilliant basics for visitors and residents to get people out and about enjoying, exploring the natural environment. So please, can that be on the priorities, to actually get stuff done so that we can see things happening, and who's going to take the leadership?
I think in terms of the general scope, it is about working with all of our partners, and for some of those examples that you just quoted, it's about working and bringing the Coast and Countryside Trust on board and getting them involved and making sure that they're alive to what this strategy is all about. But I think in terms of ownership, it's about all of us. It's about not dissimilar to the focus we had on children's services, but we need to actually embed and ingrain this ethos into all the thinking we do across all service areas. So ultimately, the responsibility would lie with the Chief Executive, and she's nodding, and equally with all of the senior leadership team. And Kevin alluded to in his comments that it could be any one of the SLT members who are leading it. It sits currently within the portfolio of Councillor Stockman, who we know is unavailable this evening, because that is her portfolio covers health and public health. Sorry, adult social care and public health. So that covers Joe Williams as Director of Adults and Lincoln as Director of Public Health. So they will be the prime leads, as far as I understand, on the oversight of it. But the delivery is the responsibility of us all. I don't know whether any officers wanted to add anything about that corporate responsibility.
Chairman, I'll just come in briefly. I know that Councillor Murray wants to come back. Councillor By, your question's obviously a very sound one. The item 4 on the recommendations talks about the formation of a strategic oversight group, and at the very end of that it talks about providing collective leadership. So although that may be a bit back to front in the sequencing, I think that probably answers the question. We will need to to form that strategic oversight group, and that group will be responsible. And that's not just internal, by the way. That includes external stakeholders and partner organisations. And that group, as I see it, would be responsible for pulling together some of those overarching strategic documentation that's referred to in recommendation 1, and also ensuring that that whole system approach is delivered throughout the authority. As the chairman says, the collective leadership above that specific group would be this cabinet chair, and also from an officer perspective the council senior leadership team. So that's how I see that responsibility going forward.
Thank you, Kevin. I've got Councillor Law and Councillor Morey.
I was just going to actually point out the recommendation 4 and how we explained that within it. But I want to say it's all of our portfolios, all of our responsibility. The health and the well-being of our communities is every councillor's responsibility, regardless of your portfolio. From my point of view, from children, the statistics within this are shocking. 1 in 4 children are inactive. I can't imagine, oh my goodness, I had 4 children, I'd have loved one of them to have been inactive, would have been great. But, you know, I find that a staggering and shocking statistics, 1 in 4 children. And also that children aged 5 from the poorest income groups are twice as likely to become obese compared to their more well-off counterparts. That's tragic, because, do you know what? The outdoors and everything we have on our doorstep is free. You don't need to be rich to access our beach, access our parks and our green spaces. But what you need to do is help some parents to engage with this. And I would hope that this strategy and the focus put on it by us all will help get, you know, other people. If we get people within our community, if we get the parents moving, we get the children moving. You don't have to involve in a sport. You don't have to pay a fortune for your club uniforms. There's all sorts of things that are available out there, and I would hope part of this strategy would be for us to, as a council, to promote what is available to people, and actually to promote what is free. I know Torquay United do all kinds of activities since COVID to combat isolation, loneliness, and to get people moving again, to do it in a safe environment. I think a lot of people that feeds into everything we've spoken about tonight, almost like feeds into each other. You know, for example, in winter time, are you really going to want to go for a good, strong, fast walk after work when it's pitch black outside and it's not well lit? We have to consider all these things, and all these things fit together. So I'm all for this, and I think it's great. But I love my sports, so.
Thank you. Councillor Morey. Sorry, Councillor Long.
Just a quick one. I often go after dark or very early mornings walking my dog, and it's the only scary thing is meeting senior leadership team members in their hoodies out walking their dogs. That's the most scary thing. But apart from that, it's fine.
Councillor Morey.
Yes, thanks. I mean, you're absolutely right, Nick. Walking is an important activity that can't be underestimated at all. In fact, because of medical conditions, some people can't do strenuous exercise. And that has to be taken into account. We do have a team. We have had a team working on producing this. It can only go so far, but as Kevin, Darren, everybody is saying, it's got to be extended across the directorship now in the various areas to make it count. Just on a personal level, I guess, just to prove that you can actually do things that you didn't think you could do. As you know, I'm lean, slimline, just over 40 years old.
You've taken up gymnastics.
I recently was asked and took up the offer of playing 40 minutes, I think, was of a charity football match. Didn't score, mind you, but that's another matter. But that surprised me what I could still do, me being sort of middle-aged sort of person. Shut up. What the message is, I guess, unless you try, you don't know what you can achieve.
Councillor Bye.
Thank you. Nothing anyone said I would disagree with, and I think we're all like friends together now. But this goes through, and I'm sure it will go through. What simple difference will it make, and when can people expect to see things happen?
I would say what difference it could make, page 100. Physically active people have lower health risk, a 40% reduction in cognitive decline, 35% reduction in type 2 diabetes, 33% reduction in hypertension, 48% reduction in depression, 30% reduction in all-cause mortality, 66% less bone fractures. Well, I'm more likely to get more if I'm more active, but still. 20% reduce in breast cancer, 25% reduction in coronary heart disease and stroke, 19% colorectal cancer. I think I might have said that one out. But, you know, there are real tangible benefits from this. And they are all listed, as I say, page 100.
Sorry, yeah, please, Lincoln.
So one of the things that we've already started doing, and you will notice that each of these themes deliberately has a number of potential actions that we can take. So we've begun to look at those, which ones are short-term, which ones, as Kevin has said, don't require a great deal of upfront investment. And what we will be doing as the strategy is developed is to sequence those. There are a number of things we're already doing, so clearly it isn't that we're not doing anything around physical activity, but this gives us an opportunity to link things a bit better. So working with our NHS colleagues, for example, one area, diabetes prevention program, for example, that the NHS funds. We also invest about 300,000 in lifestyle, our lifestyle service, which has an element of promoting physical activity for people at risk, etc. We're going to be reprocuring that, so we're actually looking at that to see how does it deliver on some of these aspirations, etc. So there's quite a lot already in train, and I think what this gives us is that strategic focus that coordinates and helps us to move forward so that those benefits that we know can accrue, that we are in a better position to get those in place. The other thing which is part of a strategy development is the indicators that we will look at and the things that change relatively quickly. So there are annual surveys that are done, who runs it?
Active Devon.
Yeah, it's run through Active Devon, but it's a national survey that's done that tracks people's physical activity over time. And I'm getting Alzheimer's, but it's an active people survey or whatever it's called. And that does track data, so we can track things like what's happening at different age groups in terms of their reported physical activity and so forth. So there will be a number of very strong markers that will tell us broadly what's happening, but also a number of factors that hopefully we'll be able to see tangible things happening on the ground that we know will lead to the desired effect.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lincoln. And I think it's also, as I say, about embedding it into the psyche. When people are developing and officers are developing strategies and policies, it's how does this impact upon health and well-being? How does it contribute to the outputs determined in this strategy and Torbay on the Move? And I think what we are also keen to do is to make sure that there is some financial support for some of those projects, particularly some of those. A lot of them don't take a lot of money. You know, a few £1,000s can go a very long way in this kind of promotion. But it does also link into that place shaping and the signage that you referred to earlier. So all of those things, you know, making a decision about investing £20,000 in new signage, actually that's going to have a benefit to the health and well-being and the Torbay on the Move agenda. So it's about making people think, and you know, and the report templates I'm sure could be modified to reflect that, to you know, what is the benefit and officers around are nodding their heads. So I think it's important that we really embed it in our decision-making process. Any other comments from around the room? If not, I'll move to the vote. All those in favour? You can vote if you like.
Unanimous, Chairman.
Sorry, my apologies. So we have Adult Social Care Governance Changes and Appointment of Adults Continuous Improvement Board. Councillor Stockman would be introducing this item, but in her absence, Councillor Long.
Thank you very much, and I'm sure that the Director of Adult Social Care will be keeping the horror off her face that I'm proposing this item. As you've explained, Councillor Stockman would normally be doing this, and I'll be proposing this item in a very un-Councillor Stockman type way, in that it will be brief. This report sets out, and I had a very happy Sunday afternoon preparing for this item, you'll be pleased to know, and this report sets out how the Council can reassure itself that the adult social care functions it has are being done to a good standard, and that the strategic direction is being achieved. Torbay Council has delegated responsibility for many of its adult social care functions to the Torbay and South Devon NHS Foundation Trust. However, Torbay Council remains accountable. The report proposes that the current Adult Improvement Board become the principal way Torbay Council oversees the delivery of adult social care, and that it is done jointly with the Healthcare Trust. To illustrate that change, the Adult Improvement Board will become the Continuous Improvement Board. The revised board will also oversee the quality assurance framework, including finance. Health and social care scrutiny will continue, as will oversight of safeguarding adults with the Safeguarding Adults Board. And I think I'll leave it there. So I would like to propose that, because I'm sure it's clear as mud to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Long. And I'm not going to add too much to my seconding, but I mean, it is an important change, and I'm sure Joe Williams will elaborate any further in terms of the significance of this decision tonight.
Thank you. I'm sorry I've got my laptop retired for the evening earlier than I did. It's no longer with us. So this proposal is to align adults' governance and arrangements for scrutiny to children's services. Obviously that's delivered very well for children, and we have the same commitments to adults in the Bay. A lot of our residents depend on these very important services, and we must assure ourselves that we're doing the best for those people. We delegate quite a lot of our arrangements, a very successful long-standing arrangement in Torbay. This is the way by which we assure ourselves that those are working and will continue to work in partnership with the NHS and both the community and voluntary sector, who also provide essential services. The terms of reference have been refreshed, but in essence the improvement board has been in place for quite a while and has been working, but this is just in the terminology changing to align itself to children's services. And also the scrutiny is a reflection of the fact that the council takes its scrutiny of adults' health and social care seriously, and we want sufficient agenda time to ensure that we can allow our colleagues in scrutiny to ask those questions and make sure we're doing it properly. So I'm sure everybody read the white paper when it came out in December. Those of you who follow adult social care legislation keenly, and that's the other reason that we are doing it at this point. We've done a self-assessment of the requirements of that, and people will be interested in the care cap in particular, and all those things are coming through now. There's a lot of work. It's not been an easy couple of years for adult social care, and we've got a lot of serious work to be done now to make sure we're aligned with the requirements in the white paper, and that's what the board is going to be doing principally.
Thank you, Joe. Any other comments from around the room? Councillor Bye.
Thank you so much. That plug for Children's Overview and Scrutiny. I appreciate it. So where Children's Overview and Scrutiny are going to follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bye. If there's no further debate, Councillor Long.
I was going to ask Jo Williams, because she mentioned the cap, as to whether people would still have to sell their homes to pay for their care, but I think that might be a debate for another time rather than tonight. But
the detailed guidance isn't out about how the principles of the cap are going to be implemented, so I can't answer, I'm afraid.
I think just to add, in summary, adult social care is such an important part of the work of the council. It's a significant budget, and there's significant pressures, as we know, in the world of adult social care. There's serious underfunding. We've just seen the increase in national insurance contributions for staff and employers, which for the first 3 years is going to go to support the NHS. It leaves us with a severe challenge in local government as how we deliver adult social care at a time of increasing demand. And obviously one of the ways of keeping costs down is to ensure that we create the conditions and the environment for people to stay at home longer, as long as they wish to. But that comes at a cost in its own right. But it's more beneficial for the individual than going into expensive care. So there are huge challenges, and this board and this process will help ensure that in Torbay we are being across the latest changes in legislation. But at the end of the day, we need the government to step up and properly fund adult social care. I'll move to the vote. All those in favour?
Unanimous.
Okay. So move on to the report of the Children and Young People Overview and Scrutiny Board, Safe Places for Young People. Councillor Law.
So, I'm sorry I wasn't able to access the whole of it earlier on ModGov. So these are the recommendations that came from the Children's Overview and Scrutiny Board. They're before you, you'll see them on the paper. And in particular, there was a piece around safe spaces for young people. So the Safe Spaces project, sorry. So you'll see that we are working with partners to consider the wider youth agenda, and safe spaces will be considered as part of that. The work to establish family hubs is already well underway in Torbay, something that we were actually a little bit ahead of the curve of the government, setting those up and saying that they need to be set up. And we're meeting with representatives from the Youth Investment Fund to consider a bid for funding to support the youth agenda. So I think what I'll do is just for noting, it is our response to the points that are before you that were put over by Overview and Scrutiny. I'd like to invite Councillor Bye again, if he would like, as it was an Overview and Scrutiny recommendation, if there's anything you'd like to say.
Thank you, Councillor Law. I think we'll take that response back to Overview and Scrutiny, because I'm just not 100% sure that it's the response that we were expecting, because it was all about exploitation, and it was all about safe places in the community for children and young people who are feeling vulnerable, and we want to remove them as far as possible from the risk of exploitation and harm. And I've read through that Cabinet response, and it isn't quite what I was expecting. It seems again to be a lot of worthy work, but I'm not sure that it's directly focused on the question that we put.
I'm afraid that what we've got here is totally different to what I submitted and what I had. So I am not sure what's going on here, I have to admit. In terms of the safe spaces, I think Overview overview and scrutiny, it was put to you that that project had already been begun by another organisation in Torbay. Having looked into that, actually that wasn't the case. So this safe spaces will need to be taken from scratch. It will be done through the one of the subcommittees of the Child Friendly project, most likely under the exploitation or the Where I Live. It's going to be designed in conjunction with the young people. The previous, I think, Imagine This put forward that this project had actually already been done. However, it hadn't, when it was put to Community Safety Partnership, what they were proposing at the time was a combined place for children and adults, and it was really not a safe space for young people, what was being proposed. That went completely by the wayside, and it's never come to fruition. So
Councillor Law, maybe I'll ask Nancy, who's in the virtual room, if she'd like to add anything to reassure Councillor Bye.
Yes, thank you, Chair. There was a response to overview and scrutiny as part of our exploitation deliberate within overview and scrutiny, and what was put forward was that there was already a safe place project within Torbay that could be supported to look towards supporting some of our young people where there were concerns and vulnerabilities around exploitation. When we looked into it further and worked alongside some of our partners, we came to realise that actually the Safe Places project that had been put forward as an opportunity for us to explore for our young people was actually a model that was delivered for both adults and young people, and therefore it wasn't appropriate to take that any further with our young people where there is exploitation as one of their vulnerabilities and complexities. So what we have presented today is a response to the original recommendation to explore the present Safe Places project and whether we could utilise that for our children where there's exploitation. What we have proposed within the response is, following consultation with Community Safety Partnership, our police colleagues and our Youth Justice Service, is to review that project but align it with the wider youth agenda work that we're doing in order that we can consider a safe place project across Torbay as a whole that links into exploitation for young people and has dedicated space for young people and doesn't link it with maybe some of the safe places that adults are able to go in terms of their vulnerabilities, because we are conscious that some of the vulnerabilities of our young people where there is exploitation, we need to have dedicated trusted adults within that who understand exploitation for young people. So we're trying to ensure that we're responding to the recommendation of overview and scrutiny and linking it to that wider piece of work that we're hoping to undertake within Torbay with all the key stakeholders and partners.
Thank you, Nancy. Does that go some way to reassure you, Councillor?
Well, I think there's just more work to be done. I think that's the key, more work to be done. My understanding, the member of the Overview and Scrutiny Board who's really passionate about this is Joe Morell from the Youth Trust, who's one of the external partners, advisors, who sits and contributes very valuably. It isn't like a place, which is kind of the cabinet response, how I would have interpreted the cabinet response. It is kind of to sign up businesses, organisations, partner organisations. So there's lots of places around the bay that youngsters who are feeling vulnerable, at risk of exploitation, just desperately needing to access somewhere, maybe just for a very short time. That, as I understand it, was what she was pushing for, and I don't think that comes across in the cabinet response.
I think Nancy was nodding vociferously behind you. Councillor Law.
Yes, so the recommendation was that the Cabinet be recommended to support a review of the impact of the Safe Places project to develop and work with our partners and young people to identify safe places for young people to go with their communities, linked to the family hub and spoke model and learning from best practice from others. That was the recommendation that came to us. Our response is actually not in the main pack, it's attached as a separate document, which is why I couldn't see it in the paperwork there. So, and I take your point about what was said, but what I'm saying to you was that was complete misinformation. That facility does not exist. We've looked at this, that's what we've gone out and we've done a review of this. We've asked around, we've found out, and the project that Joe Morell was talking about was deemed to be unsafe to young people. So it may have gone ahead as an adults project, but it never went ahead as a young people's project. And so that's actually quite delayed us by a long, long time, because as you'll know, I've been talking about this project for a good 12 months or more. And unfortunately, trying to track that project down and find out about it has really, really delayed things, delayed where we are in our response. So in terms of the recommendation, the Safe Places project will be followed up through the Torbay Friendly initiative, and will be covered by exploitation and the Where I Live strands to it. The Family Hub and Spoke model, that's actually that's the government early help initiative, and that's what we're already well down that line in creating those. As you know, we've looked at what provision is available in the community, in the various community centres and things, and that's been brought together. That's the family hubs are actually our early help, which we have brought to you. So I think it's maybe a little bit of confusion in the terminology, and it's maybe, hopefully, that clears it up a little bit.
Thank you, Councillor Law. I just need to formally second our Cabinet response, otherwise Lisa will tell me off. So I'll formally second that response. And clearly, you know, this is all work in progress, and it's perfectly right that the Overview and Scrutiny Board, and your body in particular, holds the Cabinet and the administration to account. And I'm really comfortable with that, because that is Overview and Scrutiny working at its best. So if there's no further debate, move to the vote. All those in favour?
Unanimous.
Then be no further business. I declare the meeting closed.